Who is the best swimmer in the world? Who is the best golf player in the world? And who is the best female tennis player in the world? Now, who is second best? Wait, no, don't Google that. Don't Google that. Unless you follow these sports, the vast majority of you should have no idea. Of course, in certain disciplines such as football, with the likes of Ronaldo versus Messi, or basketball with the likes of LeBron versus Michael Jordan.
The best footwork inside.
You have no idea how good Tim Duncan was! Oh my god!
You'll have debates between multiple people, but these are really only about deciding who belongs in first place. A truly second place contender is usually much more unknown. Since the trend of Jujutsu Kaisen's strongest, Gojo Satoru, there's been a massive trend of people paying attention to the strongest type characters that are meant to represent the archetype of an idol, standing at the pinnacle of their verse. But from this can come a very interesting perspective, which is that of a character directly beneath the first, and that is those in the shadows of the strongest. The archetype usually follows a character who perpetually exists in second place, unable to usurp the one above them due to the sheer gap between their powers or simple competency. Maybe they do eventually catch up and reach their level, but this is often short-lived, as they are quickly surpassed again, or even worse, the pinnacle is not anything they imagined it to be. These characters are defined by their inferiority, holding massive amounts of jealousy and envy for the one above them. This envy is usually their greatest character flaw, leading to a path of self-destruction, bring down both themselves and those they care for. In this video, I'm going to dissect some of my favorite examples of this archetype, explaining why these characters are so interesting and what the author was trying to represent. The budget for this video is unusually high. Wait, isn't that number normally 0?
It's simple, really.
That's because we've been sponsored by Polybuzz. Bro, my wall. Analyzing characters is interesting and all, but why stop there? Wouldn't you want to actually speak with them? And that's exactly what Polybuzz is for. Polybuzz is a service that allows you to hold private and unrestricted conversations with thousands of different characters in real time. Let's give it a try and mess around with, say, Endeavour. We'll ask him what it's like constantly being below All Might. Look at that. Insightful and immediate responses to any of your questions or conversations. Oh my god, my landlord is going to be so pissed off. Exactly. Even if you can't find the character you want to speak to, you can just go ahead and create one yourself. No, I didn't say. Download Polybuzz from the link in the description for free to get started today. And remember to use code PINT44 to get Polybuzz Plus.
Throughout heaven and earth, I alone am the honored one.
Gojo Satoru is without a doubt the strongest modern sorcerer within his generation, and likely many more generations, save for one. A 1 in a million man, blessed with both the 6 eyes and infinity technique, Gojo has lived most of his entire life upholding the title of the strongest. There are countless analyses about Gojo's loneliness stemming from the title of the strongest, but I think equally as interesting as that is the man who was alienated from Gojo in the first place. Special grade curse user and friend turned to enemy, Geto Suguru. Outside of just their basic chemistry as friends, or maybe more than that if you believe certain interpretations of the story, the thing that seemed to hold the two's friendship together the most was undoubtedly the shared title of the strongest. Gojo could rely on someone else to cover his back, while Geto could do the same. This was essentially the pillar of their friendship. So much so that the moment Gojo finally received the definitive title of the single strongest once awakened, it was almost inevitable that their friendship would fall apart. Geto becomes obsessed, not only with purging non-sorcerers off the face of the earth, but also with the shared difference in strength between him and Gojo. This is best represented through his speech at the KFC, yeah, I still can't believe that happened there, where Geto points out Gojo's ignorance towards the difference in their abilities, stating that while his dream might seem delusional through his eyes, if he had the power of Gojo Satoru, it wouldn't seem like such a false reality. And building on from this, there's an interesting juxtaposition that can be made between the two's curse techniques, both doing a good job of representing their respective characters. Basically, Gojo's Infinity keeps things away, being both the ability that grants him the title of the strongest and representing the loneliness he gains from that title. No one will be able to understand him and no one will be able to get close. And as an inverse of this, Geto's curse technique essentially allows him to gather allies. The main strength of curse spirit manipulation is power through numbers and variation, both representing his cult-like influence that allows him to charm others, and how he tries to surround himself with found family, recruiting others not just for his cause, but as genuinely important relations. So while Gojo is best while working alone, Geto works best when cooperating with others. And I believe this reliance on others is why he would never be able to claim the spot Gojo held, as a core theme of strength in Jujutsu Kaisen relies on hedonism and relying on yourself above others, disregarding everything around you and burning it to the ground, as stated by the King of Curses himself. And as such, much like those before him, Geto's entire dream was doomed to fail. Goku is one of the most universally recognized, strongest type characters within all of fiction. His influence is so massive that the moment some new overpowered character shows up in a different story, even from a different medium entirely, the first question fans will pose is whether or not they could beat Goku, and usually the most brain-rotted power scaling debates ensue afterwards. Like, who invented pixel measurements? Someone crushed that guy's skull. While not the strongest in his verse, Goku will always be as strong as the plot needs him to be, due to the endless progression of Dragon Ball's power scaling. And as a direct result of this, a character like Vegeta is born. Vegeta is a person caught up in an endless game of catch-up. The moment Goku achieves something, Vegeta must dedicate his entire being into doing the same thing. Maybe he'll get one moment of satisfaction before immediately being put down and starting the entire process again. This cycle is of course worsened by Vegeta's own ego. As the Prince of All Saiyans, he should be the pinnacle of his own race. He should be the one to unlock the legendary Super Saiyan. He should be the one to defeat his people's oppressor, Frieza. And yet Goku is the one who achieves all of this, an insignificant random who, for some reason, always seems to be one step ahead of him. And these constant insults and character degradations just build up across the entire series, suffering an embarrassing defeat to the androids after gloating to them, completely destroying Cell before allowing him to power up and being utterly embarrassed, taking backshots from Frieza in front of everyone, like damn, I'd crash out too. And yes, all this constant humiliation has to hit a boiling point, which is of course what happens in the Buu arc with Majin Vegeta. Vegeta chooses to embrace his darker impulses, receiving a power boost from the wizard Babidi at the price of his morals. He kills hundreds of innocents, commits countless atrocities, all in the hopes of finally surpassing Goku in the end. But this is still not good enough. He's on par with Goku now, but the fight isn't in either's favor. Even when sacrificing all of his morals and trying to discard the love he had received over the last 7 years, the best he could achieve was merely matching Goku's strength. And finally, after realizing the consequences of his actions, Vegeta resolves himself on a new path, attempting to defeat the greater evil that is Buu. However, this task soon proves itself impossible, and Vegeta is left with one final decision to make. Rather than sacrificing his love to gain strength, Vegeta flips that on its head, choosing to sacrifice himself and any chance he could ever gain to surpass Goku in order to protect his loved ones. In his final moments, he learns to take pride outside of mere battle and strength, putting that away for the ones who have cared for him and shown him love. I'm sure he'll be smiling up at them from down below because he's not going up, he's not going up. And that gallant sacrifice of one of the series' most prominent and important protagonists, of course, achieves nothing. Yeah, I never said Dragon Ball had deep writing, even if I led you to believe so. Every now and again, in different disciplines, competitions, and sports, you will have those regarded as the greatest of all time. Undisputed individuals who revolutionized their chosen field in a way that no one ever has and no one ever will. How must it feel then to be someone alive at such a time in a similar field, watching yourself be swallowed by their shadow? The world of My Hero Academia presents an interesting picture, one where heroism has been corporatized in a way that blends the title of a savior with celebrity fame. A big theme within the story is what it means to be a hero, and frequently, we as the audience get to see some of the shortcomings of a society that commercializes something as inherently moralistic as heroism. But perhaps the greatest exception to that corruption is the character of All Might. In every sense of the word, All Might was a symbol, a flashy smile that never left his face, phenomenal power capable of changing the weather through his strikes, and a never-ending drive to save people. Every tenet of his existence as a hero, the very fact that he was there was enough to guide society to a state of peace. And Endeavour was the man left to pick up the scraps of such a perfect hero. Enji Todoroki spent the vast majority of his life aspiring to be the number one. But the harder he tried, the more apparent it became that the gap between him and All Might was simply insurmountable. And so, going down the worst path possible, Endeavour instead decided to relegate this mission to his children. The man literally planned out his own children's genetics, selecting a wife for little other reason except her powers and the genetic marvel their quirks would produce. Endeavour's first attempt was Toya, a child who shared his inherent love for heroism, perhaps to an even greater extent, represented by his flames which burnt hotter than his father's. Endeavour wished to push Toya down the path of heroism, but his father's immense expectations were too much to bear, and Toya ended up both figuratively and literally burning himself out. You'd think that after causing your own child to burn himself to death, Endeavour would put a break to his plans, right? Well, if he knew how to give up, his name wouldn't be Endeavour, would it? His next two attempts were deemed failures, and only the third, Shoto, was capable of reaching his expectations. At this point though, the psychological impact and abuse performed on his wife had become too much to bear, and taking out her resentment, she permanently scarred Shoto, a physical representation of her hatred to the man whom she birthed him with. There's an interesting point and detail when looking at Endeavour's heroism. He is categorically the hero with the most resolved cases in all of history, meaning he has outperformed every other hero, including All Might when it comes to helping people. And yet, despite this, he is still not the people's number one. I think this is because there is an inherent difference in the magnitude of Endeavour and All Might's individual acts of heroism. To put it simply, Endeavour is more obsessed with the title of being a hero, pumping out solved cases like checking off boxes, while All Might better represents the morality and meaningfulness of a hero itself. His character arc truly begins once All Might is forced to retire, finally reaching the point he had been desperately chasing his entire life. And rather than acting out in catharsis, satisfaction, or joy, Endeavour simply looks confused. Now that he's at that pinnacle, he can finally understand the position All Might was in and the weight he was forced to bear as the symbol of peace. And even more important than that, he can finally understand the damage he had inflicted on his family. What ensues is possibly one of my favorite stories of atonement within anime, with Toya literally returning from the ashes as the final nail in the coffin to remind him that the past never dies. As Endeavour is forced to deal with the emotional repercussions of all the family he pushed away and abused, and his own worst failure coming back from the grave to haunt him, before ironically becoming a discarded success as Toya awakes his mother's ice quirk right before being pushed to the brink. What Endeavour represents can be inferred from his name alone, a man who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals, and the consequences when nothing will stop for him either. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. My voice really hurts, so I'm glad you stuck around. Make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment too while you're at it about your favorite second strongest character. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.